If you can hear us, we cannot hear you. Yeah.
It does help to unmute. Thank you. I'll mute you again. I unmuted somebody else here. You moved on my list here. Okay, we're all set. Okay, thank you for letting me know. This is what the update screen looks like now. And so version 1803 is coming to a Windows PC near you soon, or you may have already had the update. One of the most common complaints about the earlier feature updates was that the update arrives unexpectedly and commandeers the system for an hour or more, usually at a time when the PC owner is unprepared for it. This update addresses that complaint in two ways. First, there's an additional option to warning that the update is about to be installed, with options to schedule the installation for a convenient time. Second, the most update takes place in the background, which means the visible part will take less time and allow you to get back to work more quickly. Okay, let's go and talk about some of the new things that are in 1803. First one is the timeline. And this is a picture of my timeline, and let's see, it's Windows tab, and this is what I'm showing right now. You see I don't have as many windows open, but you can see that I've got some things in the background, some other things. What it doesn't show is I've run some Word documents, I've run some Excel documents, and they should be on here as well. And there's a reason for that. And let me go back to our presentation. And then the timeline adds history to the familiar task view switcher. So if you go down to the bottom where the task view switcher is, if you hit the Windows and tab, it does the same thing. The signature feature of this update offers a radical change to what happens when you press the Windows key and tab, and click the task view icon on the taskbar, or swipe up with your 4 fingers on a precision touchpad. That option still displays icons for all the running apps, but version 1803 lets you browse through a rich history as well, with the option to sync activities from multiple devices. So the syncing the devices is important. Right now, I don't sync my devices with my Word and my Excel, and so they don't show up on that timeline. The timeline will display a history of apps and documents you've been using across synced Windows 10 devices. To control or turn off this feature, go to Settings, Privacy, and Activity History, and you can shut it off. Now, the settings have changed considerably. The Settings app continues to expand and get a new look. The entire app has been reworked using fluent design principles, giving the icons and typography a more graceful look. I don't really notice that, but you may. There are no new top-level categories this time around, but the list of settings available for management is greatly expanded, reflecting the relentless migration away from the old-style control panel. You'll find new fonts subheading under the personalization. Options for managing disk space are now consolidated under System, Storage, and the many options under Privacy category are arranged more logically. Display and audio options are now fully integrated in the settings too. Some of these things we're going to cover as we go along. The sound configuration now looks like this in settings. And the sound configuration options have migrated now to the Settings app. If you remember, you used to have to click on the little icon of the microphone down on your, or not the microphone, but the speakers down on your taskbar. Open Settings and click System, and then go to Sound to see these options that are in the new build. From here, you can choose the default output and input devices, handy for notebooks that connect to a dock or use as a desktop. The App Volume and Device Preferences tab offers a large, let's go back here a second, offers a large number of settings as well, and ways to manage that output. This functionality is still available through the Mixer app from the system tray. You just right-click the speaker icon and you'll see those options. Again, this is what they look like, and they're under System, and then you click on Sound. Startup now is in the settings as well, and it's because it's been ported from the Task Manager. If you're grown accustomed to managing startup apps from Task Manager, you can continue to do that, or go to Settings, System, and Startup, where you'll see the same options. For at least now, they're available in their previous location. That may not always be true. Diagnostic Viewer. I'll give you a second to take a look at that. And to view this viewer, you use it to inspect telemetry data. Over the past 2 years, the company, Microsoft, has been addressing criticisms dealing with the extent of diagnostic data, also known as telemetry, that it collected, both with individual customers and with privacy regulators, especially in Europe. The Diagnostic Data Viewer tool, new in this release, is perhaps the most significant response yet. And you can do some filtering because there's so much information there. So again, it looks like this. To get it, you have to get it from the Microsoft Store. This is what it'll look like when you go to the store and you search for Diagnostic Data Viewer. Hit Get, and it will install on your computer, and then you can run it from there. Another new item is the Windows Defender Application Guard. It protects your device against malware. Microsoft Edge is opening in Application Guard, and it takes a few seconds. To turn this feature on, to create a secure isolated browser session, Windows Defender Application Guard is one of the most important security features in Windows 10. Using Hyper-V virtualization, it offers a way to access the web in a secure, isolated session that can't install ransomware or otherwise compromise the system. However, note in the next paragraph, in earlier releases, this feature required Windows 10 Enterprise Edition. It will now work with Windows 10 Pro. I'm afraid it doesn't work with the home version. Yeah, Mike, it is. It's simple. It is like an integrated sandbox. After enabling this option, you'll see a new application guard window option in Microsoft Edge. So it works with Edge, and I understand it may eventually work with other browsers, but at this point it does not. It may or may not later on. The Windows Update Advanced options. By default, we're dynamically optimizing the amount of bandwidth in your device. That is a good thing because you can set your upload and download limits for updates. Effective with this release, you can take charge of the download bandwidth, although the option is buried pretty deeply. Go to Settings, Update and Security, Windows Update, Advanced Options. Click Delivery Optimization, then Advanced Options again, and yes, that's 2 levels of Advanced Options. From there, you can limit the bandwidth used for Windows Update for its downloads, the foreground and background. So you can also throttle the peer-to-peer uploads of available updates and set a monthly upload limit to avoid unpleasant data averages. You can now share information on your computer to someone close by. And you can do it to everyone nearby or my devices only. As you can see, there's a choice there. And you can share with people different items as well, mail, OneNote, Skype, and there's different ways in which you can do it. And you can also share music, again, using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It's powered by Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. This feature might seem familiar if you used other platforms, but for Windows users, it's new and welcome. You can share files, web pages, contacts, and other supported data types on a PC-to-PC basis using Bluetooth or Wi-Fi connection. It doesn't require complicated setup, and both the sender and recipient have to approve a transfer, making it absolutely unlikely to abuse it. So someone can't just walk up next to you and steal some files from you. Excuse me, dictation. We've always had a dictation in Windows. I shouldn't say always, but we've had dictation in Windows, but now it works a lot better and easier. I thought I had a little article here, and I've lost it. So let me see what I can find handy here. I'm not finding anything here. There we go. I'll find this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out here and let's go ahead and just open up Notepad. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the Windows key and H. It opens up the initializing, not nationalizing. Next line. No, period. New paragraph. New paragraph. New paragraph. I guess it won't skip a paragraph. Oh, it stopped. So we'll come back up here. Windows Hypervisor platform gets an extended user mode API that allows third-party virtualization, stacks, and applications to create and manage partitions at the hypervisor level. Period. Stop dictating. Okay, so you can see it doesn't get everything correct, but you can go back in and edit as you want to. So that's the dictation. It works in Notepad, it works in Word, it works even to fill out forms if you want on your Windows 10 machine. So voice dictation, it's easier. It's now available in any text field or supported app by pressing the Windows key and the letter H. The improved dictation feature in Windows 10 will capture your thoughts quickly and accurately so that brilliant idea won't be lost. So if you don't feel like typing and you can just, I've got a headset on, so it's good for me because I have my hands free as well. I can think out loud and have it do my voice dictation and pretty much write an article without having to type it. Then I go back in and make corrections. Cortana now has a notebook streamlined. And let's see, I need to close this out. Cortana gets a streamlined notebook, new skills. Microsoft is pouring a tremendous amount of resources into its Cortana web service, and this update, Cortana's notebook, which contains preferences and personalization information, gets a solid cleanup. From Cortana in the Start menu, you can also access reminders, lists more easily. So all you have to do is say, "Hey Cortana," and then add to my shopping list, and it's just add things to it, and it will create a shopping list for you. It also gives you, grocery lists, restaurant lists, shopping lists, books, and TV. So it's all kinds of lists are available within Cortana. The lists sync with Cortana on an iPhone and an Android. Ironically, Windows is probably the least important platform for Cortana in 2018. Mobile matters most, which is why Microsoft has been aggressive with its updates for those platforms. The list and reminders features in this update feel slightly unfinished, according to one of the articles I read. So they're going to improve this as new feature updates come by. Focus Assist. Use Focus Assist to eliminate distractions. It was formerly called Quiet Hours, but now they've really expanded it and call it Focus Assist. If you really want to help staying focused on that project you're supposed to have done today, these options should help. You can shut off notifications completely or limit them just from sources you designate as priority. The feature has a toggle switch in the Action Center, and to get more granular, go to Settings, System, and Focus Assist, and these are some of the choices that you have in that setting. Password recovery for local accounts. I've known many people who have a local account. In other words, they don't connect their Windows to their Microsoft account. They use either their own sign-in, and it's local only. And you can password recovery now is supported on local accounts. During initial setup, Windows 10 is fairly aggressive about pushing you to sign up using a Microsoft account. But if you prefer a local account, this option is still available. With a Microsoft account, you have multiple options to recover if you forget your password. With local accounts, you historically had no such option if you forget your password. If you're using your Microsoft account, they can send you a text, they can call your phone number, or you could use a password or a combination of them You just have to give that information to Microsoft so they can do that. Effective with this feature, however, with this feature update, setting up a local account now involves defining a series of questions that can help you recover from memory lapse. It's especially useful for consumers and small businesses. And a special hint for any kind of security questions, you can lie. Because you post that picture of your first dog, or you talk about that elementary school you went to, or you post a picture about your mother or your grandmother and it's your mother's maiden name, you might not want to put that in. So you can always put something else in. Just remember what you put in. So when you lie, remember the lie that you told. Mute the icon for Edge. Mute icon for Edge. You ever go to a website and they're playing a video in the background? It happens to me a lot, especially in these presentations. What happens is that like PC World, is it, or PC Magazine, they start a video automatically when you go to the page. And if you open up a couple of links with these videos, you don't know which one to go, and you have several links open, you have several tabs open, you don't know which one to go quiet the video. Well, in Edge, and Edge only, you can now mute the icon for Edge, and it will show you that it's muted, and it won't play the sound of that video that's part of the ad or is part of the page. So Edge catches up with other browsers. Some browsers do offer that now. In this release, Microsoft Edge finally catches up and offers a speaker icon on tabs that are currently playing sounds, wanted or not. The icon is live, which means you can click it to mute the annoying sound instantly. Dual GPU settings. GPU is a graphic performance card that you would have. It's the graphic performance unit, or your special card that you have for your graphics. Some systems have two graphics cards, one built onto the system and one that's a built-in, and some may even have two cards. You can now specify which one you want it to use. So if you're doing gaming, you may use one. If you're just doing some other things, you may do another, which will save power. So on dual GPU PCs, you can assign graphics support on a per app basis. Common feature for high-end laptops like Microsoft's own Surface Book is the ability to switch between the built-in graphics cards or chips and discrete graphics processing unit. In this feature update, you can manually specify that you want your video editor to always use the high-powered GPU, regardless of the impact on the battery life. You'll find these settings under System, Display, Graphics, and then Settings. You now can shop for fonts in the Microsoft store. Finding extra fonts for your Windows PC often involves browsing to sketchy websites. You now can do it through the store. New Fluent design improvements. I didn't show a picture for this, and the reason being is that it really doesn't show up. It's something that is going to be personal to you. I don't see it, but there's more translucent effects, and there's unlike the Aero Glass in previous versions of Windows, all these new UI effects won't be a strain on your GPU and other system resources. There's the Microsoft Edge improvements. You can have books. Edge has been updated in every revision. There are improvements to the redesigned hub, which provides access to your favorites, your reading lists, your browser history, and downloads. There have been several new improvements to its handling of PDFs and ebooks, and still with all the new features and improvements, the adoption rate remains low for power users as Chrome and Firefox dominate the desktop browser space. I use Chrome. I occasionally use Edge. As I mentioned earlier, there's a better Microsoft Store. There's more things in it. You'll see progressive web apps, and I'm going to talk about those in just a little bit, in a move that has the potential to bring new apps to its virtual shelves. PWAs are basically web apps that behave like native apps and are able to work offline, send notifications, and be installed on PCs. Developers have the incentive to develop PWAs due to them already being supported by the major browsers, such as Chrome, and more than they do at the present to develop UWP apps for the Microsoft Store. So one of the first PWA Store apps to be revealed was from Twitter. Okay, here are some other things with the Windows 10 update, the 1803 update. Alongside the big changes, there are an array of smaller alterations as well. And I'm not going to go into these specifically. I'm just listing them so you'll be aware of what they are. And so you don't say, Huey missed this when he was talking about the updates, but I didn't go into detail. So if you hate Windows 10 automatically hiding scroll bars, you can now stop them from shrinking out of view by adjusting a toggle in settings. I mentioned the multiple GPU feature. The My People hub now allows you to drag contacts to arrange their priority, as well as drag pinned contacts to and from the taskbar. I'm going to talk about people and so on just a moment. The virtual assistant Cortana has been redesigned to be simpler to use with a new organizer interface, which I mentioned. You can limit how much bandwidth downloads take in the foreground under delivery optimization in the settings app. For business users, IT admins, and developers, there's a Windows Defender Application Guard, the WDAG, designed to help protect firms against online threats by adding container-based isolation to Windows 10 Edge browser, bringing it safely to contain malware. That's what I talked about a little bit earlier. But you can also do a Windows subsystem for Linux. The Windows subsystem for Linux, or WSL, allows Windows 10 to run various GNU Linux distros from the Windows Store, providing access to Ubuntu, OpenSUSE, Fedora, and most recently, the Debian and Kali Linux. Other additions, other developer and admin-focused improvements, virtualization improvements, Windows native command line tools have been expanded, and there are upgrades for Windows Pro for Workstation Edition. Okay, which features didn't make the cut? The Cloud Clipboard. Much as the name suggests, Cloud Clipboard will allow users to copy images, links, text, and even documents between Windows 10 PCs and phones running Android and iOS, providing they are signed in to the same Microsoft account. But it didn't make it in this update. Probably will be in the next update. Preview versions of the feature show a Cloud Clipboard either automatically sharing whatever is copied with linked devices or being triggered manually. Sets was talked about quite a bit to be included in this version, and they didn't get included either. Sets introduce support for tabbed windows, allowing users to group together related apps, documents, files, and websites into a separate tab, or into separate tabs in a single desktop window. The idea is to allow the user to group together every piece of content related to a specific task inside a single window. For instance, putting Office documents and websites side by side. Microsoft is promising set support in a wide variety of apps with indication that the feature will arrive for Redstone 5 update, which will be in the fall of this year. Okay, what's Microsoft taken out of Windows? No longer part of Windows with this Windows 10 1803 update. They removed the Groove Music Pass. It was Groove streaming music, and music sales through the Microsoft Store ended in 2017. Now the app has been updated to reflect this change. You can still use Groove Music to play songs on your PC or store it on OneDrive, but you'll need to use a different service if you want to stream music. People suggestion. The People app will no longer include unsaved contacts for non-Microsoft accounts. You will need to manually save contact details for people you send mail to or get mail from. Now, I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. I think it's coming up in a slide. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Control panel language settings. You now need to use the Settings app to change your language settings. Also, Home Group has been removed, but not the ability to share printers, files, and folders. You can connect to suggested open hotspots. This option in Wi-Fi settings was previously disabled and has now been removed from the page. You can manually connect to free wireless hotspots via network and internet settings from the taskbar or control panel. Conversations in the People app no longer works while offline or when using a non-Office 365 mail account. And also the XPS viewer, which probably you saw, maybe used once or twice, but it's no longer included by default. And if you install Windows 10 1803 on a new device or as a clean installation. So you can install XPS viewer from apps and features in the setting apps or through the features on demand. Deprecated features. What deprecated features means, these are features that Microsoft is removing but replacing with something different. In other words, it's being replaced, not just removed. Software restriction policies and group policy probably doesn't affect most of you. Offline symbol packages. Not sure many of you use symbols. If you do, it's moved to be an Azure-based symbol store. And the Windows Help Viewer is no longer, if you want help, you just go online for help. Also, contacts between Windows and Windows Contact API, they're no longer being worked on, and Microsoft suggests that you use the People app to maintain your contacts. What's happened is, and I see this, my Outlook has contacts, Microsoft has contacts, and Windows has contacts, and they're not the same thing. Well, they're trying to get them to work together more, and so by getting rid of the one that Microsoft in the People app to maintain your contacts, use your People app as opposed to using the Microsoft one. A phone companion, use the phone page in the Settings app so you can talk and work with your phones easily. And then the IP version 4 to 6 transition technologies, that's being updated as well. Okay, before we go on to some other things, let's see if we have some questions. I want to see what how our time is going. See, there's some, Mike made a comment, some concerns about home group going away, especially with a mix of Windows 7, 8, and 10 computers wanting to share devices, printers. Apparently, Mike, as it said in my presentation, that printers and some devices will still be able to be shared, but the actual home group will be going away. I don't see anything else. Any comments or questions from the floor? Dick? I'll turn your mic on.
Okay, any questions in here? Nope. Don't seem to be at the moment.
Well, I either did a very good job or a very poor job. I'm not sure which.
I'm sure your crystal clear explanations answered all the questions.
Yay.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to mute you again, and I'm going to go on to some other items. And we close this. And close that. And I want to go to here. Let's full page this. And then make it larger. Okay, so we covered pretty much the first several of these. I would like to show you this cheat sheet, which I found interesting, from Tech Republic. They have a video, and I'm going to stop it as soon as it starts. If it ever starts. I guess maybe it's, yeah, it's trying to. I think I stopped it. If not, you'll hear it. Okay, Windows 10 is never finished. They talk about some of the features that I talked about. Talk a little bit, they show another picture of what the nearby sharing looks like. And oh, I didn't mention this, and I didn't have it in my list, was SwiftPair. Connecting two devices via Bluetooth requires even less of a setup than it did before with supported devices. I need to put that in my presentation if I do it again for somebody. There's some more fluent design. I guess that's supposed to look better than it did. Better privacy, and I talked about that. Fewer distractions. Some of the stuff I used, some I used in our presentation. This is a pretty good article. At the bottom, there are some links for some other articles. That's what I'm trying to get to here. I know I'm going through this fairly quickly because you can go to that same article. For 32-bit, you only need 1 gigabyte of RAM for Windows 10, 2 gigs for 64-bit. You should have 16 gigabytes at least, or 32-bit OS, and 20 gig for 64-bit. Display minimum is 800 by 600. So if you've got a really old laptop or small laptop, if it doesn't do at least 800 by 600, you may not be able to run it either. I thought they had some other articles listed at the bottom of this article. I guess it was a different article. Let me close that. But it's a good cheat sheet. They have a lot of this information at hand. There's some information on the timeline feature, the diagnostic viewer. Let's take a look at this article. That was the picture I think I used. My presentation. I'll make this a little bit bigger here. There we go. And so you can send, how much data do you send to Microsoft? You can do the basic or you can do full. Diagnostics and feedback. There are settings that you can set on, whether you even want the diagnostic data viewer. Tailored experiences and improved inking and type recognition. You can delete the data. And you can also, obviously can view it with the viewer. So that's that article. I'll come back to the settings app if we have time. File transfers to other PCs. Nearby sharing. Didn't go into too much detail on that. I probably won't use this. I don't need to. But you can enable it. You can set it for my devices only or anybody nearby. You can turn on nearby sharing, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi on and off via the Action Center. So it's now in your Action Center. You can share a file. You open File Explorer, find the file you want to share within a device, click the Share tab from the ribbon, and then the Share button. Or a quicker action is just to right-click the file you want to choose and use share from the menu. Either way, a second window will open that lists nearby devices and contacts, and others you can choose from to share to who you want to share the file. And that was what I showed, was a screen capture from my computer, but this is what it looked like for this person's computer. If you're sharing the file, you will see a notification that the device is being contacted and send the file. So you do have to approve it. On the other device, a notification will pop up so the user can accept or decline the transfer. If there is no response or something isn't configured correctly, the transfer will time out. And you will find the file saved in Downloads folder or whichever one you set as the shared experiences and settings. You can share a photo or a link. And again, tells you what to do in case it doesn't work. And again, the link to that is this link right here that goes to Groovy Post. Using Microsoft Edge Application Guard on Windows 10, how to use the new sound settings. Let's talk about progressive web apps. The first, let's see, is this a video? No, this is just showing. These are some of the video. Let's go ahead and make that larger. These are some of the PWAs that are available now for Windows. The first grouping of Microsoft published and approved progressive web apps, or PWAs, are now live in the Microsoft Office for those on Windows 10 Build 1803, also known as Redstone 4. This batch is the first of what is expected to be hundreds of modified websites merged with Microsoft's app platform. Microsoft has promised that PWAs will be treated as first-class citizens in Windows 10. That's not just programming talk either, as the hybrid apps across between PWA and Universal Windows Platform, or UWP, will often be published by Microsoft themselves. This is what it looks like on the store. That process is now going forward with 14 apps now live in the store, in addition to the official Twitter PWA. The listings were first observed. Here's the first grouping: Skyscanner, Student Doctor Network, The Penny Hoarder, OfferFinder.net, ZipRecruiter, Space, Oyster, Men's Warehouse, ASOS, Bill.com, Airfare Watchdog, My Carfax, Travel Zoo, and Daytrip. And these are now PWAs. They're applications that run like programs, and you can use them offline as well as online. There are two paths to get those PWAs into the store. This goes into if you want to create them, so I'm not going to go further with this. But that's another good article. This one's from WindowsCentral.com. There's another article on PWAs. This is a little bit different from what we've been used to. and it may take a little bit more to get your wrap your head around it, but you're going to see and hear the term PWA a lot in the coming months, and there will be a lot of applications that will be PWAs, which means you can use them on Windows, you can use them on your Android, you can use them on your iPhone or iPad, and they'll all work alike. They're basically the same program, and they're using a browser in an app-like situation. So what is a progressive web app anyway? Technically speaking, PWAs are web apps progressively enhanced with modern web technologies: service worker, fetch networking, cache API, push notifications, web app manifest, to provide a more app-like experience. Unlike packaged web app experience, PWAs are hosted on your servers and can be updated without issuing new updates to an app store. Additionally, new web standards, such as Service Worker, enable interoperable ways to implement push notifications, support for offline scenarios, background refreshing, and more without platform-specific code. So people are going to be able to write an app that will work very easily on a PC, on Android, and on your iPhone or iPad. And will work in Edge as well. And Twitter demonstrates the future of Windows 10 apps. And there's another article talking about what's been removed and added. And then I also, for people who are Microsoft admins, the features you're losing in the update, and then some small fixes and some common problems. So I've covered a lot. And I've done it fairly quickly. I'm surprised there aren't more questions. Let's see, I was one here that the timeline feature, let's talk about that. We didn't go into this, I don't think. One of the most anticipated new features is the timeline. Using Windows 10 Timeline to launch it, use the Windows key and Tab. It'll display a history of apps and documents you've been using across synced Windows 10 devices. Microsoft calls them activities, and shows you what you were working on at any given time. You can move the slider on the right with your mouse to scroll through or swipe on a touch screen to view your past activities. Select the search icon. You can search through all of the activities listed on the timeline. As you see on this particular one, they have news and movies and their Twitter notifications, their notepad. So it isn't just looking at currently open items, but a deep link into specific content within the apps. So I mentioned I'm not getting those opening, and it's some settings that I have to turn on that I'm going to have to further look at so I can get my Excel and Word and WordPad and Notepad and all to be able to be viewed if I want on this history. So you can let Windows collect my activities from this PC. So I probably have to click on that, and then I have to let Windows sync my activities from this PC to the cloud. So anything that I'm doing on my OneCloud will also show up. And this is how you would do that. These are your accounts. Turn them on. Collect activities. And you can clear them as well. Just by clicking one button, we'll clear them out. So if it's something you don't want anyone else to discover, you don't want to have a record of it, you can clear it as well. You should also know that Task View is still available by hitting Alt-Tab, and you'll see your current open tasks like with earlier versions. But Timeline is Task View on steroids. You'll probably notice that Timeline definitely works best with Microsoft apps like Edge, News and Weather, and Office 365. Not all developers have configured their apps to integrate with Timeline, but this author found many that do. The diagnostic viewer that I talked about a little bit, I don't have installed, so I can't show you what happened with mine. This is similar to what we saw on the screen in the presentation. When the company first released Windows 10, 2015, there was a lot of unwarranted criticism, and I mentioned that this is supposed to take care of that. It's a diagnostic viewer, and I guess maybe I did cover this. You can turn, yes, I did cover these views. Okay, we did cover them, good. Okay, let's talk about settings. I mentioned the startup apps are now in your settings. You can do an easier cleanup from settings called Storage Sense.
Huey?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear me. Good. I can unmute.
Yes.
We have a question when you get a break.
Sure. I'm just showing the some of the settings. You can manage the fonts, and I talked about that a little bit, but you can get them and then you can manage them as well. And the settings, advanced Windows update options, and there are lots of changes and a lot of additions in the various settings. Question?
Okay, go ahead. This is from Bob
Okay.
Black.
This might be two questions. It has to do with that nearby sharing thing. That sounds a bit cumbersome to me. Now, but correct me if I'm wrong. I'm familiar with near field communications, or NFC as it's called in Android, where you just turn it on and you can put two phones next to each other, and let's say you wanted to transfer 16 addresses, you just tap on the 16 you want, and the other person just taps their phone, and it all transfers over. And in this one, it sounds as though you have to individually, let's say you wanted to transfer a dozen files.
Okay, while you're talking, I'm going to go ahead and find some screens that I want to talk about. Go ahead.
The way you described it, it sounds like you tap on a file, then you approve it being transferred, and then the other machine person has to accept it and then transfer it or whatever. And then it sounds like you might have to keep doing that, like a lot of effort. And particularly if you had a use for it, such as you said, you have several machines in your setup, in your house. And if you were just wanting to move some stuff from one machine to another using that system, which you said works, I think, in Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, would you physically have to say, transfer this file, and then go over to the other machine and say, accept this file, and then go back and transfer another one,
You're probably going to have to do that, because otherwise you don't want to send something without them accepting it. If it was somebody standing next, somebody in public.
That's true.
So you've got to control it some way. But let me show you when you do it, you can right mouse click on a particular file, and then say share, you're going to get a screen like this. So you're going to have a particular machine or a person or more people or a machine. You click on that, that'll give you some kind of a pop-up, I guess, on the other machine saying, will you accept it? And yeah, you're going to have to say, yes, I will accept it. Well, the same thing as if you're running TeamViewer between two computers that are next to each other, you're still going to have the other machine accept it.
Well,
It's the only way you're going to protect yourself. It's
Well-
it's not a direct connection, in other words. There are
I
other
could-
ways to do what you're talking about doing easily. And that's why you would network as opposed to trying to do this.
I can think of a use for it. For instance, if you had a speaker who said, "Oh, I have this really neat file or program or freebie thing on my computer. You ought to all go try to download it somewhere after the meeting." And in this instance, he could just say, "Oh, I'll share it." Press the button, and everybody who has a computer can just grab it off of his share thing, if it works the way you say.
Okay, see where it says I can share or receive content from? It says my devices only. That's a drop down. The other one says everybody nearby.
Yeah, so that sounds like a good use, like at a meeting.
So you could go into settings, change that to everybody nearby, and then do what you say, and then everybody's going to have to approve it on their own machine. But if they don't want it, they don't approve it.
Now, does everything have to be a Microsoft machine with Windows 10 and the ambassadors update or whatever it is?
The answer to that is I don't have the foggiest notion.
Okay, all right, okay, just wondered.
Yeah.
I knew you. Okay, thanks.
Can you click on that drop down?
Can you click that drop down?
No, this is a photo.
Oh,
Notice this
I-
GP, that's from Groovy Post. It's from the article that I'm looking at.
Okay, Stan has a couple questions.
But I did show it in my slides that I did the drop down and then took a picture of it so it shows both of them. So I did show that earlier.
in that example of dictation, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Was there any opportunity to do any training of that? Like, was it Dragon Naturally Speaking where you had to go through and let it get used to your voice and the way you pronounce words?
No, but let me show you something I found that will help. Let me go out to my Evernote and how to open up voice dictation. And I've got this in my Evernote, but I can go to the actual website and I'll close up my Evernote, which I don't need now. Okay, how to use voice dictation on Windows 10. It's at windowscentral.com, and they show you the commands that you can use. You can select word, select that, or select the next 3 words or previous 2 words or 2 paragraphs, start spelling, clear selection, unselect that, delete that, strike that, delete word, and so on. So there's a lot of things. You can have this cheat sheet in front of you till you learn how to use them. So you can do a lot. But no, I didn't have to do any training or anything. It just picks it up pretty good. And it's fairly accurate. It's one to play with. You know, it's not like you got to go out and buy a $400 program like you used to have to do and then find out it didn't work. Just open up Notepad or WordPad or Word or whatever program you want that you use for your processing. I would imagine that the Google Docs, it'll work. And just go in and start talking and see if it does. And if it does, how well it does.
Thank you. Second question, it was hyping, there was an ad on the right side, Azure, A-Z-U-R-E. I can Google it, but not at the moment. Do you have any idea what it was? It's free for 1 year from Microsoft.
Azure is their hosting package for networking and internet, and it's way beyond what you'll ever use. But you're welcome to go take a look at it. It's one of their major products. It's what the big enterprises use, big companies use. It's not something that the end user usually is aware of unless they're working in a company that uses it.
And I'm just curious, is he logged on yet? Is he with us?
Let me see. Not yet.
Okay.
So
I have a clarification on Dragon and what they're doing, because I worked for Dragon for a while and went through their training, and it sounds as though you described a feature that you can use it either online off the cloud, or you can just use it without being online in your computer. But the Dragon was very dependent upon knowing the vocabulary. That's why you had to train it, because it was picking up your pronunciation of a dictionary that it had built into it. And they had special versions of it for instance, doctors and lawyers, which had all of the terminology that a lawyer and or a doctor would use. And if a doctor tried to use the common home version, he'd have a training thing for weeks because he has to go through all this terminology. And it was very good for the medical. I used to have copies of all those different versions, and it was remarkable, especially compared to there was an IBM product at the time. I can't remember what it was called.
yeah, I can't either, but I remember it.
Yeah. And that one was in fact, there were 2 or 3 other competing companies, but Dragon was by far the best one. So anyway, that's it.
Well, back to the dictation, you seem to think it looked reasonably good. I got a very different opinion. Cheat sheet you're talking about. You have to learn the language to tell it how to change to a different paragraph. You tried to go to the next paragraph. Several things that you tried to do. It looked very clunky to me. And, I'll play with it and see what it works like.
Oh, I also have a suggestion for your next presentation about it. Because you mentioned that it's really good at putting your thoughts into typed version. And I was thinking, well, that sounds misleading because you actually have to speak. You can't just think and have it type it on the screen. You know,
That's coming.
yeah, that'll come because you did go to telemetry too, or whatever it was.
By the way, Dragon, naturally speaking, is still available from Nuance, which is the company I use I have Paperport, and I have their OmniPage, and they also have some PDF programs. But just to see now, it's, whoops, I could hit shop now. It's still starting at $300, and they have different ones for different professions as well. So that's not cheap, but most people don't need that. But like you say, for doctors and lawyers and so on, they want it to be very exact and have all that information in there. So that's what you would use. But if you don't need anything that specific, by all means, I'm trying to, let's see, I've got to do this to close that. Sorry about that. I have something blocking it on my screen. Don't want to give them too much advertising. But for the most part, what's included in Windows is fine.
Okay, Huey, I have one more question.
Okay.
You were talking about the ability to mute those ads that show up when you open something from PC World or PC Magazine, one in the lower right-hand corner.
Only in Edge.
Only in Edge, but it mutes the audio. Now, does the ad with the audio come up first and you have to mute it for each ad, or is that a setting you can put in that will say, hey, when an ad comes up, it will come up silently?
I don't know the answer to that because I've noticed that they've found some workarounds. When you tell it not to come up silently, sometimes it doesn't. At least on my Chromebook, I found that, and probably on other things as well.
Yeah, I've never been able to stop that. It always has
Yeah.
to come on, and then you have to mute it. Any other questions? Okay, continue on, Huey.
Okay, well, I'm ready to close out. Let me, because I see Izzy is on. And let me bring up my logo and tell you to thank you for joining me and the Central Florida Computer Society. Those of you who are online, please don't go away. I want to talk to you. And we're going to continue with the main CFCS meeting online, but will not be in this recording. So I'm just closing out the recording, but this is the Central Florida Computer Society, the Windows Special Interest Group, or WinSIG, for Sunday, June 10th. Thank you for joining. And